Welcome everyone to 3PL RX's webinar, The Workplace in Crisis. And what I'd first like to do is kind of introduce our panelists. I always start with myself, so I might as well do that first. But my son Zach and I started 3PL RX as a boutique resource exchange platform utilizing AI and emerging technologies, focusing the vital aspects of a 3PL business just to help small and growing 3PLs in areas of labor, safety, technology, compliance, real estate. And our goal is just to share our learnings, both the successes and the failures. And part of what we do is we do webinars, podcasts, and a monthly spotlight. And this panel has agreed to participate in our spotlight, and we're excited to have them. I think it's a great topic and great speakers. So Robert Martichenko is a visionary business leader and board chair of TrailPath Workplace Solutions. He's an entrepreneur, thought leader, professional education instructor, business author, poet, and novelist. A continuous thought leader, Robert sits on multiple advisory boards, including the chair for the American Logistics Aid Network, Alan. And that's actually where I met Robert. And moving to Florida, I can tell you firsthand, you see the great work Alan does, and we're going to be connecting with him more in the future. And executive board for Association of Manufacturing Excellence. In addition, he has received several prominent industry awards, but most notably the Distinguished Service Award from the Council of Logistics Management, CSCMP, the highest recognition achievable for professionals in supply chain. He's an active member of the business community, is passionate about the people side of lean, enterprise excellence, the future of workplace development, and creating meaningful employment environments. Martichenko complements his professional experience with a bachelor's degree in mathematics, an MBA in finance, and a Six Sigma black belt. Welcome, Robert. Ryan is Donovan is president of States Logistics. Ryan began his extensive logistics career in the 1980s, having held various operational and management positions in the warehousing, transportation, and packaging. He began his career working on the development and implementation of radio frequency warehouse management systems. Since then, he has been involved in all areas of the 3PL environment. He has spoken at the Council of Logistics Management, the ECR Conference, Warehouse Education and Research Council, and several grocery manufacturers of America's workshops. Ryan is a member of both the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals and the Warehouse Education and Research Council. He received his BA in Business Administration and Marketing from California State University at Fulton. Welcome, Ryan. And rounding out the panel is Matt Melrose, and he is the co-founder and CEO of TrailPath Workplace Solutions. With over 2 decades of supply chain leadership and operational experience prior to founding TWS in 2023. Matt spent 13 years as a chief operating officer for Lean Core Supply Chain Group. Matt is a people-focused and results-driven leader experienced in designing and implementing end-to-end supply chain solutions, transforming organizational cultures, and building world-class teams. This work has taken Matt around the globe, where he has unique pleasure of working as a leader, operator, consultant, educator, and always a student in a wide variety of industries, organizations, and cultures. While Matt will forever have a strong drive for lean and operational excellence, it is the people and leadership parts of his work that he's most passionate about. Matt has been an integral leader in developing discipline, learning framework, business management systems, and defined pathways for advancement of organization leaders and team members. Our panel today will really do a phenomenal job on talking about the workplace in crisis. And a lot of our attendees today know that I personally reached out to them. And, having worked in a family business, I can tell you the number of times that my father fired me and my mother rehired me. That is a workplace in crisis. So with that, I'll turn it over to our panelist. Matt?
Chris, Chris, thank you very much. Hey, everybody, it's Robert, and I'm going to kick us off, but you're going to hear from Matt and Ryan a lot today. But first, I just, Chris, thank you for the invite, and just as importantly, if maybe more importantly, thank you for your contribution to the American Logistics Aid Network, and Kathy Fulton and Mark Richards and everybody on the board. Just so appreciate somebody with your visionary and your character and just your experience in our industry. And Alan's done amazing work for 20 years, but we did some amazing work this year, in particular with Helene and Milton as they came in and did what those storms do. So listen, everybody, thank you so much. And we've really been looking forward to this particular webinar because we kind of think of it as a closed peer group. These are all people, you and Chris know each other, and you're all in the same industry. And Matt and I certainly know the industry, and Ryan lives the industry every single day. So I think you can be well assured that you've got a good, some people that can understand the highs and the lows that come with the 3PL industry. I'm just going to get through some things kind of quickly, and then we can really get hearing about the work that's actually be done. But it's important to understand, before we talk about the how and the what, it is important to understand the why, so we can connect the bigger picture to to some of the tactical work that we're going to be talking about. And this is just introducing TrailPath. What we're doing is we're taking the 20 years that we learned building the Lean Core Supply Chain Group, which was sold in 2020, and we are focusing fundamentally on the people environment, the culture and people environment of operational excellence, and building enterprise excellence inside our organizations. So just a little bit of what we're going to do today, some opening remarks that Chris just led us through, and we're going to talk about the crisis that is happening, lessons that we've learned along the way, and then implementing meaningful employment environment. You'll see this term MEE stands for meaningful employment environment, and then the MEE value proposition and impact, and then some Q&A. And so, like I said, I'm going to be a little rude at the beginning here and go kind of quick so we can get to the stuff, because we're most interested in the Q&A near the end of our hour. So first of all, this idea of this workforce in crisis, it's we could spend a whole hour just talking about this, but let's just kind of tap the perimeter of it. We have a bunch of things that are separate things, but they're creating a perfect storm. And the big things are population demographics, shrinking, reduction of birth rates combined with aging populations, all resulting in a shrinking population. Then the population that is left over in the workplace has different attitudes about work and workplaces. It's very important to separate those two things. I have an attitude about the kind of work I want to do. I also have an attitude about where I want to do that work. And all of this is making it tough for us to attract, recruit, develop, and retain talent. And this is the world we're in. Every single industry is impacted by it right now, and it's not going away. In fact, it's just beginning. So this is going to be something that we absolutely have to get our arms around as a leadership team. So along the path, the last couple of years, essentially what happened very quickly, the Lean Core was sold. And I have, if there's one thing that is the most important thing, the most important reward I ever got from 20 years in this industry was the friendships that I got to make with Chris and with Ryan and a host of others. And essentially over the last 2 years, we've been working with people we know, people we already trust, about the people side of business. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But here's just the big lessons learned. The first is, organizational prosperity and team member prosperity are inextricably linked. They are not two things. The success of the business and the success of the person are one thing. Second, the environment, the workplace environment is very different than culture and values. We hear a lot about culture and values, but that is not what is necessarily happening on the ground hour to hour. There's an old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, we're saying the hour to hour eats culture and strategy as a little snack. People are unique. Every single person inside your organization is unique. So you can't have one stroke ideas about how we're going to develop people, what people want, what people will be motivated, how you will motivate people. Every single person is unique. So we need a path for every person, recognizing that what we all want is very different. There's a thing, and you're going to hear a lot about this. You'll hear it from Ryan here in a couple of minutes around the decline to thrive status. This is something that we've learned, is that people are in one of four places in their workplaces. They're either declining, which means they're on their way out the door, or they're just surviving, which means they're staying there because they have bills to pay, but there's no joy in their life there, or they're growing and surviving, which is where we want people to be. And we need to recognize, whether you're the CEO or a brand new frontline team member, you're in one of these four categories of decline, survive, grow, or thrive. Workplace visibility. And I know most of the folks on the call today will be from the logistics industry. We love KPIs, we love dashboards, we love the score of the game. But it is unbelievable how blind we are when it comes to the people side of the business. We can talk cases per hour and uptime and downtime and all of the things that connect to processes and equipment. Then as soon as we start talking about how are our people doing, how are our people feeling, how are our people trained, how are our people engaging with the workplace, it's like we have nothing. It's like we become blind immediately. And this visibility piece is such an important part of this work. And then last but not least is what we're trying to do, and what we've learned is that there's two things that are very difficult to scale. And that is leadership behaviors and team member participation. You can teach leaders all day long, but they can leave the classroom, even if it's a virtual or physical classroom, and then they can just go be the leader they are at their individual personality, individual character level. Similarly, team members can say yes, 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 and then they can just go to the floor and participate to the level that they choose to participate. We need to be able to understand the leadership behaviors we want, the level of team member participation we want, and then scale it and actually expect to scale it across the organization. And that's really a big, big part of this work. So with that, from a state's logistics perspective, throwing the passing the puck over to you, Ryan, my fellow born Canadian, this idea, and what do you believe this work was so critical and important and requires urgency, especially in your industry, recognizing that our two organizations have spent the better part of the last year working together on this stuff?
Yeah, thanks. Well, let me give some background on States, so at least everybody can understand where I'm coming from. You know, States is a third-party logistics provider. We do warehousing, transportation, packaging, value-added services. We have over 800 associates and a couple hundred contract associates. So we're, over 1,000 team members that we work with every day. We started back in the 50s. Our founder always preached that our associates are the most important assets for our company. We've lived with that. We have an amazing team that drives our excellence and our performance in what we do. We've always focused on employee engagement and knowing that our associates are making us successful in doing what we do. Even our mission statement, we did our mission statement a little over 20 years ago, but one of the statements in that mission statement is that we want to be recognized by our customers and our employees as the ultimate solution in our regions. When we look at our competition, we can all get the same buildings, the same tractors, the same trailers, the same WMS, warehouse management systems, transportation management systems. What differentiates us are the people and we want to have the best people. This has been our focus and our goal forever. In the last decade, we found it's getting harder and harder to find and retain, the people, the good people. In the last 4 years, this has been our biggest challenge that we're facing. In every conference we go to, in every peer meeting, trade shows, and we talk to people in the industry, everybody is saying the same things, that it's harder than ever before, and it's not getting easier. The statistics that you talked about just show it's going to continue getting tougher, and this is our biggest challenge. The last 5 years, our growth strategy, we've struggled. We can get buildings, we can get equipment, we can get everything we want. We can't get enough people to fill the roles that we have to allow us to keep growing. Add, technology. It's easier than it's ever been before in the past for people to leave work. If they don't believe they're paid enough, if they don't believe that they're adding value, there's advancement opportunities, they don't feel connected to the company, if they don't feel there's trust, they can post a resume on Indeed, LinkedIn, and there's immediately opportunities for them to go somewhere else. And all of our facilities, they're in industrial areas. Every building surrounding us has help wanted signs and are recruiting and trying to get people. So it's a tremendous challenge. The warehouse and transportation industry, it's not the sexiest industry to be in. Share a story. I got into parenting a little bit late in life. I've got a young daughter. She's just getting into school. She went through preschool and she's in first grade now. And everything to do at the start of the year, they get a piece of paper and they fill out, things about themselves, their favorite color or favorite food, sport. The last question is always, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answer is, fireman, astronaut, a doctor, dinosaur, social media influencer. To my dismay, not a single person in her classes have ever wrote down that they want to be a warehouseman or a truck driver, right? So disappointing to me, but I understand that.
I always tell people, Ryan, I was a runway model, so they understand that better. Unemployed, but a runway model.
Yeah. So our industry is tough to get people. People don't grow up wanting to get in. The flashback to the 4 years of COVID. Nothing really good came out of COVID. But if there's one thing I can say that came out of it that was awesome, all that chaos that happened. People were going to the stores and they can't get toilet paper. They finally really realized, supply chain is critical. What we do, truck drivers, orders, warehousemen that are picking orders and delivering toilet paper to the stores. We became valuable and people realized that, but that's about the only thing good out of COVID. But other than that, people aren't flocking to our industry saying, this is what I want to be when I grow up.
I love it, Ryan. And I've always believed that those of us in this industry, that if there was a personality test that was a little unusual one, we would score very high on the score for we really enjoy a lot of suffering. And that's why, somehow we just must like to suffer or we wouldn't stay in this industry the way we have. So very good. And the idea that the pandemic highlighted the essential worker is such a big part of this as well. And with that, I would say that this crisis and what's going on started well before the pandemic. The pandemic just brought visibility to it. It's like, Warren Buffett once said, when the tide goes out, you get to see who isn't wearing a bathing suit. And the pandemic was the metaphor of the tide going out. And now we see that we have to do work with our people. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So moving along here. So what's the path forward? The path forward, then, it's like, okay, so what? Yes, there's a problem. Yes, we all agree there's a problem. Yes, we believe that we need to focus on people, and we're the type of leaders and owners and board members that actually do believe that people are the differentiator in our industry. So if we believe those things in our core DNA, then we go, okay, but what do we do? What do we actually do that's different than the things we've been trying to do? And this is where what we're advocating is that we need to build a meaningful employment environment where the meaningful employment environment is guided by dignity and meaningful work. And to define a meaningful employment environment so we can get some contextual structure around this, well, a meaningful employment environment is defined as trust has been established between all team members, fundamental needs are being met for the people inside the organization, the environment is participative, we want to participate in the environment, and the work is meaningful. And so those are the four main areas that we've been working in, and we're going to show you the framework here before we in a couple of slides. So with that, we'll move forward and get right into it. So essentially, when we did our value stream mapping inside, and Matt and I have been in 1,000 value stream mapping events, mapping global supply chains, looking at material and information flow and so forth. We took those skills and we took them and we watched people, and we just watched people for shifts, the whole shift. What's the person doing? And it's very interesting. 78, if you take off breaks and lunches, 78% of their day is doing the work. So if the work is miserable, their day will be miserable. You can't get around that because 78% of the day is doing the work. The other 22% is interacting with people, interacting with a supervisor, with peers in the break room, and so forth. And those interactions are hit and runs. And if I'm feeling dignified, if I feel like I'm being treated with dignity, then I get a spark in my day. If I'm feeling like I'm being drained and I'm being treated disrespectfully, then I lose and I start to go towards declining and surviving in the workplace. So dignity and meaningful work are the two guiding principles. Underneath dignity, the operating principles are building trust and meeting fundamental needs. And then underneath these, we have these elements. To build trust, we need to know people. We need to know their stories. We need to know their potential. And we need to understand how we're going to develop these people. Under meeting needs, there needs to be an absence of fear of voicing my opinion, fear of speaking up, fear of tomorrow, fear of my job security. And there needs to be physical safety, so emotional safety, physical safety, and there needs to be financial security. So that's the structure of creating dignity inside the workplace. Then we go to the second, which is meaningful work, which is the first is elevating the environment, the actual work environment. This is different than the work. This is the place the work is happening. And the elements under that are autonomy and control. I need to feel that I'm in control of my schedule, of my life. Fairness and equity. I need to feel like I'm being treated fairly compared to everybody else in the organization and that my opinion matters. And I need to be part of a social community. Friends at work, we're learning, is very, very important. And then there's the work. And the work itself, the work has to be purposeful. I need to understand the value in it. Why is our customer paying us to do this? It's not just a box. There's something in the box, and somebody wants what's in the box. So what I'm doing is important, but so often we have no idea the importance of the work that we're doing. I need to have ownership of the work. I need to understand that allow me to participate in the design of this work. Who chose these tools? Who chose these processes? So often we're just inviting people into these environments, into this work, and the work is riddled with obstacles. The work doesn't make sense. And we just expect people to just put their head down and do it anyway. And then most importantly, we need to be in a position to make the work better. We need to engage our human minds. We need, as people, we are born with a purpose and with a drive to make things better. We really are. And if you don't think that about people, it's just because you've seen environments where it's been taken away from them, and people do get defeated. This is a fact. But we need people that are defeated, we need to lift them back up. So Matt and Ryan are going to talk a little bit about curriculum training that's been happening on the Next Path platform. They're going to talk about actual participation with the platform, but this is the slide you need to keep in the back of your mind, because This is the framework. This is what we're teaching people about. This is what we're participating in. These are the things that we're trying to make better, because these 2 guiding principles, 4 operating principles, and 12 elements, these are the definition of a meaningful employment environment.
Thanks, Robert. So I'm going to kind of transition into say, okay, well, now what do we do with that, right? And we talk about, I'm going to kind of connect back to some of Robert's point about every team member is unique in their desires, preferences, et cetera. So we need to create that path for every team member, and the outcome of that is how do we increase their participation? In addition to that, and kind of the linchpin of this whole thing is, leaders are team members too, right? And we need to have a path for them. But we also need to scale the way in which we think, act, and behave, right? And Ryan and I have had a lot of conversation about a lot of the things that we're teaching people. You say, well, that's common sense, right? But are we actually good at doing it? And do we do it with discipline and intentionality? And do we do it regularly? And how do we hold ourselves accountable, to doing that? And ultimately, these 2 things, added together kind of create the path for the organization, right? And how does this work actually influence, modernize, change, how we make decisions as a senior leadership team or as an organization? We're going to talk about, these things here momentarily, and obviously Ryan will have some input into this as well. So we say, okay, well, how do we do that, right? And if we go back to the scale part of this, and so we have created a piece of technology. It's called NextPath. And the NextPath is simply, the definition is an interconnected technology platform that drives improved organizational decision-making, scales leadership behavior, and increases team member participation to build meaningful employment environments. And now the neat part about this is none of those things can happen in isolation, right? They're all an ecosystem. They all work together, and they have to work kind of harmoniously for us to get to the place that we want to go, as a company, as a leadership team, and ultimately as individuals, in our own kind of personal journeys. So to build on that a little bit, this visual kind of represents the path, NextPath being that kind of nucleus. It is not the answer. It is the engine, kind of behind all of this to kind of guide, this path, if you will. And this is the body of work that our team and Ryan's team together for the past year has been working through, right? It starts with creating a plan, right? And having a baseline relative to those factors and those elements that Robert mentioned. How are we doing today, relative to these things? And that process is very different perhaps than some of the kind of traditional engagement surveys and all those things out there that, most of us are likely accustomed to. Well, as a result of that kind of planning process, we then create our kind of path forward, our roadmap, if you will, which gets into this kind of center wheel there that you see the arrow going around there, that we have to do some learning and develop that path for every team member. Ultimately, as a result of that learning, we have to participate. We're not just trying to share information. We care more about the action and the changing of behaviors than we actually do kind of the content itself. And we have to participate. And then lastly, that's where this kind of flywheel, right? As we gain all this information, intelligence, and we learn, how do we continue to make the workplace visible relative to people? Recall that comment that Robert was talking about at the beginning. It tends to be kind of this black box. And then how do we, advance as one cohesive team going forward, for the betterment of all? So I want to walk through each of these elements kind of at a high level to give you an idea of what these things look like. So we talk about that planning process at the beginning, right? This is to create our baseline. This is to generate our priorities and roadmaps of which we should tackle things. This plan consists of 3 different bodies of work, right? We have a people-based assessment back to the framework and that decline to thrive that Robert mentioned, and we're going to tease that out a little bit. We're going to evaluate this from an organizational perspective. So how is this workplace instability affecting us financially? How is it affecting us from a productivity, from, and other bodies of work that we're all familiar with, but understanding like, how is this actually impacting our business? And then the last but not least, as an outcome of that, is that how do we, align and prioritize our focus areas, and ultimately create this kind of renewable year-over-year cost recovery, right? Because I think one thing that we have absolutely learned is that understanding that cost of turnover and cost of workplace instability is very hard to do, right? It's not part of our typical financial management system. There is no line item on our P&L. It's not on our balance sheet. It's kind of death by a thousand cuts. So how do we prioritize that and ultimately understand how we can impact it? So I want to go through two quick kind of high-level statements that were outcomes from our kind of plan relative to states specifically. And we found two really big things here. One is that when we ask people in a very personalized way, where do you fall on this scale? 45% of the people, so nearly half, are saying I am just surviving or declining, which is obviously on the negative side of that, and where we don't want people to be. So this is, obviously very concerning. The second part of this was when we documented that kind of financial impact of how is this impacting the business. Here are some kind of statistics that we came up with, right? So cost per turnover event, $7,000. We put this across 750 team members at a turnover rate of 40%, which we've seen a lot higher, we've seen a little bit better. But if you do the math on that, is a $2.1 million annual cost impact to the business. And obviously that has a kind of bullwhip effect on customer experience and other things as well that weren't part of this analysis, but would only add to it. So when we did that, Ryan and I were saying, okay, well, what if we just impacted that by 10%? What if we impacted it by 20%? What if we impacted it by 30%? Like, these are some very big numbers. And then obviously that would have a financial impact on states, but then how could we use that money to also reinvest back into the business and reinvest back into people? So at a very, very macro level, these were two of the very big kind of ahas and takeaway from that we've got 45% of the people that are saying, I'm just getting by and I'm just surviving. And then obviously the quantifiable kind of cost impact or size of the prize, that you see here on the screen. And with that, I'll kind of toss the ball or pass the puck to Ryan. I'm from Michigan, so I think I can use that hockey analogy. I think that's fair to say, but I just let Ryan to kind of comment when we went through this assessment process together. What were kind of Ryan, some of your most significant takeaways from it?
Well, I was expecting some great results. As I mentioned and talked about earlier, we thought we connected with our associates very well. We've always focused on that. The start of our company was all based upon our connection and our engagement with our associates. So I expected fantastic results. A testament to it, I think we had great participation. I think it was 93% participation.
It was very high, yeah.
Yeah, so that was fantastic to see. I expected wages would be a common theme. It's always going to be a focus for people who doesn't want more money. So I expected that to be the highest feedback area, and it was. The areas that really impacted me, there was feedback that employees wanted more training, they wanted more mentoring, they wanted more coaching, more opportunities to learn, more chances for growth. They wanted to have a bigger impact with the company. They wanted more responsibility. They wanted to feel more connected. These are employees that are crying out for stuff, and I mean it was very humbling to read this and see this feedback. It's really tough when you have employees that don't care and don't want to improve. You can't do anything. But when you have employees that are sharing that they deeply care, that they want to have a bigger impact on the organization, they were just missing that link between us getting connected. It was a critical moment for me, and I'm not saying I cried, but I felt like crying, right? I got dust in my eyes at the time. I wasn't crying, but I feedback, the team was generally aligned with the company's missions and our goals, but they didn't feel the love coming from the direct supervisors. There was tons of positive feedback. There were many things that showed that we did very well. but there was also plenty of feedback realizing that we needed to be better at what we do. And if this is our core focus, we got to be better. We realized we wanted a more formal structure for training our leaders on how to connect with people, how to develop trust, how to have empathy for our associates, and create flexibility in the work environment. We have, when we look at like the pillars and how we measure our success, our first pillar is always safety. We've got, I think, 14 different metrics that we use to measure safety. Service is our next pillar. We've got, it feels like 1,000 different KPIs that we use to measure service to the customers. We have monthly meetings and quarterly business meetings with customers measuring our service. We have monthly financial reports. The third pillar is, finances. And monthly, we get our financial statement. We go over that and we analyze that 15 ways. So we have all this formal structure to do those three pillars, but we didn't have a formal structure to measure our employee engagement, and that's something that we realized we needed to change. We wanted a way to benchmark how our performance is on engagement with our team members, and your team and your crew is what's helped us get there.
Yeah, Ryan. And one thing I would add to that too is that how do you do it in real time, right? Like lots of us, when I was running warehouses, I could walk out on the floor any point in time and I could see where we were at with our kind of on-time delivery quality. It was real time, right? The WMS was always updating every order picked. It just went, right? But the processes that we typically have for our people are kind of annual reviews or quarterly reviews. They're the timing. It just needs to be more kind of real time and brought up to pace with some of those other kind of structures that you mentioned that you have in place. And obviously that was a big kind of burning platform, for what we're doing. So as we jump into the learning a little bit, and this just kind of illustrates the path that we're taking, right? Obviously we have to deliver some curriculum. We all have to be speaking the common language and kind of approaching this in a particular way. And through that process, we are going to capture beliefs and attitudes, right? And very specifically why those things are there is because, simply put, if I have a bad attitude about something, I'm likely not going to participate, right? It's just, if I believe something, my attitude translates, my beliefs, attitudes, participation. So we really want to understand what those beliefs and attitudes are and how we can influence those things to create kind of your individualized path to thriving, right? So what are the specific things? So we're kind of assessing on an individual level, we're sharing some information, but there is absolutely an expectation that we're going to do something with that, and that will be kind of unique, to each and every individual, which gets us to, kind of that the participation element of the work. And I roll through these so that you all can have an idea of the types of things, that we're doing. And first and foremost is once we have that kind of path to thrive and understand it, we have some accountability mutually between the organization, the individual, to move these things forward, right? And have that kind of, giving the people a voice is something that a lot of people have said, right? Like I now have a forum to do that. And then there is accountability that we actually do something with it as leaders and, at an organizational level. And then we want to kind of facilitate these kind of real-time, interactions within the environment when it comes to, individual opportunities, but also, obstacles within the work, and how do we prioritize and knock these things down in a very kind of structured and visible way. And then last but not least, we want to use all that information, obviously, to drive improvement in the workplace and making sure that we're working on the right things at the right time, and that we're ultimately problem solving, ultimately to learn and grow, which takes us into the advanced part of it. We talk about, visualizing. I was doing some work with another third-party provider in the Southeast yesterday. And what he referred this to is kind of visibility to his human capital, right? Like, and how do we understand that, right? Like I know, Ryan, you do a lot of visits to a lot of your different buildings, right? And how do we get kind of this real-time status of where people are at, how they're sitting, and how they're feeling about it, right? Because that ultimately translates into their participation, which helps us understand and uncover those organizational opportunities of where can we be better, whether that's productivity, safety, quality, delivery, or just a particular policy that says, hey, this thing doesn't make any sense, right? How do we make it better? And then last but not least, this kind of, sustainability and continuous improvement. But it starts with trust, which is why trust is the very first one. And if you recall, when Robert went back to the framework, that was kind of the very first element. And Ryan, when we did the assessment, that was, something people were highly participative, but I think they were also very, maybe protective is the right word, that I will share only enough that I have to protect myself. And how do we get them to kind of fully buy in and illustrate our commitment and our willingness to do this work and do it together? So, Brian, I just want to kind of tee up a couple questions for you here, and you can kind of, field them. But first is, how has this work changed, how you all look at making decisions as leadership team? And secondly, how has this work impacted your frontline leaders and team members specifically? Because that's where the focus of this work is, and the highest concentration, because obviously that's where our biggest turnover and biggest instability is at also.
Yeah. Well, we've done a list of things. When we started looking at recruiting, we're focusing on making sure that we're recruiting the right people for the company. We're portraying the jobs accurately. We're not overselling, but we want to, share the highlights of States Logistics and why we're a great company to work for. We've set turnover goals for all 19 of our cost centers. We do quarterly reviews of market wages in our geographies. We always did that, but we used to do it yearly. Now we have to do it, much more timely, so we have accurate real-time numbers and know that we're competitive. Quarterly reviews of associates' wages. So we did that once again yearly. Now we're doing it every quarter. It doesn't mean that associates are getting increases every single quarter, but if they're showing market improvement in their performance, then they will. If they're not, then we're sharing more often information on what they need to do to get those increases. We're implementing more one-on-one meetings with employees. We want to strengthen that, the bonds with our associates and our leaders, and make sure we have a path for each individual associate based upon what's important to them and critical for them. We've done more recognition programs to make sure we're acknowledging when employees are doing great things. Their development, their anniversaries, their accomplishments, every way we can literally share positive results, we want to do that. What was the other question? The impact frontline workers? Well, our team members are sharing more than ever. I mean, I like to say they're complaining more, but it's positively complaining, right? They're sharing issues. You can't fix things if you don't know what's wrong, right? Yeah. So they're sharing stuff, but they're sharing it with this positive light, and they're driving creativity. They're driving more feedback. They're bringing up more challenges that we can address as a group, and it gives us more opportunities to improve. And you talked about that they were sharing, but there was a shell maybe reluctant. We're seeing that way more sharing, which drives all these new opportunities that we can get better and better every day.
Yeah, well, and I think you'll want to speak for your team, Ryan. NextPath's ability to facilitate all that stuff in a kind of a scalable way and give people that voice. There are a lot of things that have been, we call them hidden factories, right? We just never knew they were there, and people were dealing with them. Those things are, as people experience us, they make an observation or they make input, and we do something with it, very responsively, that incentivizes them to do more. And that momentum obviously has built with your team because of the way that your specifically your frontline leaders have responded to kind of addressing some of these things. And I think they've also realized that this is, nobody needs more work to do, right? We're all kind of, I think you said it, a moment ago, like we're all kind of overworked and underpaid, right? And especially at that frontline these are the people that make the business go, right? And how do we help them? And I think at first when we started this, your supervisors were like, well, I don't need one more thing to do, right? And now they're saying, well, this actually makes my day better because of how it's involving people, and it's taking some of the guesswork and prioritizing. And there's just lots of, obviously behind there that's helping us do that. But I think there's been a nice transition from, just something else to do to now this is kind of an integral part of my day and how it actually makes my life better and easier versus just adding something to my to-do list. So the other thing that I want to jump to, and Ryan, and obviously me being an operator, rightfully so, we said at the beginning, we said, okay, well, we care about people, right? And we want them to be better and we want them to be proving. That's just a fact, right? And how can we be at our best to help them do that? So how do we measure that this is actually working, right? And so I want to look at this from kind of two different perspectives, because when we did the assessment, part of this is creating our priorities and our roadmap, to where are we going and how are we going to get there, right? And what we quickly realized is that because of the many different buildings, each one kind of owned their own uniqueness relative to the type of operation or the culture that was in it. So we had to kind of create two paths based on where each site was at and where the organization was at, in itself. So I'm going to talk about things from a couple different ways. But the first thing that I want to talk about is decline to survive. And this illustrates at an organizational level, we had a population of about 750 people that participated. Our baseline for people saying, I'm just surviving or declining, was 45% of the population, as we touched on previously. Obviously, our current state for that is we don't have it because we've intentionally not remeasured yet at this point, because a lot of the things Ryan said that, like he just mentioned that they were doing was all about creating awareness and building trust and educating people that we are going to be different and we are going to modernize and we're going to do these things to build trust so that you will participate. So there's another location that's a population of about 77 people that has been going through the learning and the participation. So they're out in front of everybody else because that location was ready to do that. So their work is about learning and participation. And this is all, leveraging the next path technology that we talked about. So there's a population of about 77 people. When we did the baseline for that particular facility, there were 40% of people just saying, I am declining and surviving. Today, that number is 14%, which is just absolutely amazing and speaks to the work that Ryan and his team are doing. So this is people saying, this is how I feel relative to my work environment, and the factors. So, what's that 26% improvement in just about a year that we're seeing there. Secondly, I want to talk about turnover, right? Because this is where the impact to the business, but also the people that work in, because when there's turnover, all the other people got to pick up the slack, right? Whether they're leaders, individual contributors, whatever that may be. So when we started, our baseline percentage was 40%. As of today, we are at 22%, and that's organizational wide. When you look at the one location where we started was 24%, and today we're just under 13% for that particular location. So you say, okay, Matt, that's great. So let's translate that to dollars and impact, right? Because at the end of the day, the business needs to be better and it needs to be performing in a healthy way. So when we did this cost of instability work at the beginning, it was a $2.1 million impact. And remember, we said, could we do it by 10%, 20%, 30%? Well, today we're at 1.2 million is where we're at. So that's a difference of about, I think it's just over $900,000 is the exact number, which is absolutely fantastic and huge. And again, a giant contribution to Ryan and his team for kind of doing the work with us on that. And then you see respectively, the location in particular, obviously a smaller impact there, but that is part of the organization wide numbers. But you can see they started in a little bit smaller of a number because they were in a more stable place. And that was one of the reasons that we chose that particular location to go further ahead, because they were stable, they were progressive, and they were ready for it, right? And so obviously we've had, from a percentage point of view, a very similar impact there. And so what does this all boil down into is obviously, from a financial point of view, we've reduced the cost of instability by 45%. And also, as I think equally as powerful is that decline to thrive distribution change, just saying that people are, obviously they're enjoying it more and they feel that their needs are more met. It's more participative and all those other things. And obviously we know that participation goes into, more productivity, better customer experience, likely better safety rates, and all of those different things, which aren't even captured in here. But I wanted to share this because, as an ops leader, I would say, okay, Matt, that sounds great, but so what? Show me the numbers, right? And I think this visual here illustrates the impact together that we've been able to have, with Ryan and his team as it relates to how people feel, as well as, financial impacts, back to states. So with that, Ryan, I'll kind of toss it back to you and give you two more questions as we kind of go into the Q&A here a little bit. But, what are your thoughts, on the ROI and the value proposition of this work? And then lastly, what advice would you have for others that are kind of either facing workforce challenges or, feel that that's kind of on the near horizon, just from from an operator's point of view?
Yeah, well, I assume everybody that's listening and hears your stuff, everything we're saying has got to resonate in some sense. But at the end of the day, everybody always comes back to, what's the payback? And, for us, as many companies in the industry, our turnover rate was higher than we want it to be. We want to be on the low end in industry wide. I don't think our numbers were abnormal in any way, but we needed improvement. We went for, and every operation, we benchmarked where we were in 2023. We set goals for 2024. We did that benchmark of the cost, and the interviewing, the hiring, the training, the productivity variances, and we came up with that just under $7,000 per person. And if we hit our goals, what that would amount to, and it's over $900,000. But each cost center has their particular numbers. We look at it every month. We look at what our turnover is, and we look what the savings are happening and how that's hitting our bottom line. And for us, it's a no-brainer. And these are all the stuff that we're looking at. These are documented. We can put data to it and make sense to it. That soft stuff that you talk about that are harder to measure and quantify. The productivity improvements, you get long-term associates. They're obviously going to be better at productivity and have higher productivity in cases per hour, pallets per hour numbers. The improved safety that we have and reduction of accident costs. When we look at our accidents, majority of our accidents stem from newer folks that have less experience and less time on the equipment. That's harder to track, but it's intuitive. We know that our accident costs and the costs are going to go down when you have longer term associates with better experience. So for us, it's easy to benchmark. It's easy to show the savings and what we're doing. As far as, what advice for other companies, you got to look at your company. I suspect everybody's got similar challenges. And they're facing, similar stuff in some form or another. For us, it's always been about people connecting and engaging with our teams. The shift was to create a more formal structure, something that we could teach and be better at mentoring, and then document and track it. And we could have KPIs for how we're doing and how we're having success. And TrailPath has been able to get us there, and so we can look at our results and see how we're doing, and then financially understand what that's meaning to us. So it's for us, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, to your point, we've got the SQDC, safety, quality, delivery, costs, that we all measure, if not every week, certainly every month, if not every day, right? And to us, it was about, okay, well, how do we add the P to it for people to it to understand, okay, well, we're doing all of these things, but what are the opportunities with people, and how do we have the same kind of systems, processes, controls, visibility to understand how we're performing relative to all those things with the element of people in a kind of very real-time fashion to almost kind of systematize, what we're doing and how we're thinking about, some of the people, elements. Because at the end of the day, obviously we probably, your point, you have some equipment, you have some buildings, all that stuff is kind of prices driven by the market. Wages are largely driven by the market, for the most part. And the people are probably your largest expense on your P&L, is my guess. It certainly was when I was running operations. And I don't see that changing. Obviously, we're introducing some automation and things of that nature, but how do we get our arms around this in a way that is very intentional and thoughtful and drive some value for the people and the business? So with that, Chris, I'll toss the mic back to you and open it up for any conversations and dialogue.
Okay, thanks, Matt. We do have a few minutes if we have any questions. from our guests, you can drop them in the question mode, or certainly you can reach out to me after. I know we hit you with a lot of information, and we had hoped to keep this within an hour, but we'll give it a minute or two. And I think when you look at the DCs today, Ryan, you're challenged with implementing so much more technology. Like years ago, we would hire a guy that was, a forklift operator. He had experience, and that was great to get someone. And then as the business went on, we figured, well, let's hire for attitude and train for skill. And, it really was successful. But now you're training just about everyone coming in. So I think this employee engagement is just so important now and in the future. And I'm glad you guys were out early to jump upon it, because I know your marketplace too. I mean, we had facilities in Southern California, and that was our most challenging markets with turnover. And like you said, that every building out there is a new building with the latest equipment and that. So it's the people within the buildings. But this was great. I really appreciate that. Let me just jump to the chat room here.
Chris, as you're looking at that, and again, thank you for inviting us. And I'm going to go into my kind of inspirational and aspirational aspect of this, because in many respects, what we're doing at Trail Path has a mission focus on it. And we are, when we're feeling tired, and when we're feeling like, man, are we going to be able to climb this mountain? Because this is a big mountain. If this was easy, somebody would have done it a long time ago. But we know that capitalism takes care of the easy stuff very quickly.
Right.
And but when we're feeling, man, this is a big mountain, what happens is we'll get an email from one of the companies we're working with, and it'll be a frontline team member or a middle manager or even a director or whatever. And they'll just say, hey, just want you to know that this has changed my life. And then we get that email, and then we just go, oh, okay, I guess we better carry on with this work, that's a lot of, it's a lot of, you, Chris, because you and your family were responsible for a lot of families. And that's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility to change somebody's life.
Yep.
And so there's work here, and it's work that we all have to do together. There's no question.
Yep. And for everyone that participated, and we did, just want to let you know that we will have this up on the 3PLRX website. It's 3plrx.com shortly, and certainly have more of your teammates watch it. And thanks so much to the panelists. You guys did a bang-up job. We're right on time, and look forward to working with you guys again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
Ryan, I'll keep your picture on my office wall, bud. See you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.